Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. We are going to be talking about Kirby Fighters 2 today. It came out about a week ago on Nintendo Switch and it is one of those delightful little mid-tier games that Nintendo likes to release in between its big guns. It has Pikmin 3 and Hyrule Warriors just around the corner, so it's released this one just to tide people over. I absolutely love this game though, and I do think it's deserving of some notice and some discussion. I have a review going up on digitallydownloaded.net for you to check out. Either it's there now or it will be soon by the time you watch this video. And you can see that for my broad thoughts. But I wanted to use this video in particular to discuss some of the less positive responses that I've seen to the game and why I personally think that this game is as good as, if not better than, the modern Smash Brothers. Now I know that's a huge call, and I do not mean to say that I do not enjoy Smash Brothers a great deal, because I do, but when I look back at where Smash Brothers as a series started, there's a lot in Kirby Fighters 2 that reminds me of the origins of that series, and for me that is really preferable. I liked the earlier editions of Smash Brothers for various reasons that we'll get into in a moment, and the fact that Kirby Fighters 2 manages to encapsulate that appeal has made it a game that I have found myself really digging and having a great time with. So at time of writing, Kirby Fighters 2 has a Metacritic average of 64. I would imagine that my review will pull it up a little bit. But to just read a couple of summaries from the reviews there, Attack of the Fanboy writes, Kirby Fighters 2 is very much Super Mario Bros. For kids and or hardcore Kirby fans. It's a similar experience, just made worse by the simplistic and slow fighting and the limited variety in overall gameplay content. Content. Always got to use that word, don't we? GameSpot meanwhile writes, comprehensively adorable and approachable, Kirby Fighters 2 is a solid entry point into the fighting genre. It's phenomenally beautiful and plays tightly, but the story's difficulty spikes and limited game modes see Kirby's latest outing falling short of stardom. Now, all of these reviews are quite true in their observations, and I'm certainly not going to be discrediting them here. Kirby Fighters 2 is a much more limited package than Smash Brothers on the Switch, and it is very simplified in terms of how it handles its combat. Where Smash Brothers on the Switch aims to be this big, complex and engaging thing, Kirby Fighters aims to be this very accessible, easy to get into, and streamlined experience. I do wish that journalists would stop using the word content to describe stuff that's in video games. As I've discussed in previous videos, I think that that word is what marketers would like us to use and doesn't help us, but that's neither here nor there. Point is, I do agree with the substance of these comments. Where I disagree, and where I think my review will have a different score, well, it certainly will have a different score to where these journalists have scored it, is that I don't necessarily believe that the criticisms that these journalists have written about the game really are criticisms. And to explain why, we're going to go back and look at what the original Smash Brothers on the N64 offered, and why it was quite the special experience. Released many years ago now on the Nintendo 64, which is a very old console these days, the original Smash Brothers is almost unrecognizable by the series standards today. The game had just 12 characters, if you can believe that, just 12, 9 stages, and a tiny fraction of the items to use. There was maybe a couple dozen, and you would have them all memorized and their role in combat within a couple of games, whereas Smash Brothers now has just so much stuff to collect, to pick up, and to learn how to use that it is a very long learning process. Smash Brothers on the N64 also only had the one single player mode, which was a simple gauntlet of levels and opponents. Now that was like most early era fighting games that Smash Brothers was released around, and since then there's been efforts to put story modes and all kinds of stuff into fighting games, but the original Smash Brothers didn't really have that. There was the Master Hand Battle at the end of the single player gauntlet, and that was really all there was in terms of single player stuff, content if you will. The thing is though, I actually really appreciated the relative simplicity of that N64 Smash Brothers, And I do find the modern Smash Brothers to be quite bloated and inaccessible by comparison. The series, the Smash Brothers series, has also leaned very heavily into the competitive scene, with an extensive metagame having developed around it, and the developers are constantly tuning it towards it being taken seriously as a fighting game. And while it is a hugely enjoyable fighting game to both play and watch in terms of the competitive scene, that Smash Brothers back on the N64 had no interest whatsoever in being taken seriously as a fighting game. It was real beer and pretzels gaming. It was the kind of game that you would get friends together on a Friday evening, get your beers together, you'd start playing at 7 p.m. or whatever, and before you knew it, it was deep into the morning on Saturday morning and you were still playing. I distinctly remember playing hour-long games with dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of deaths with my friends and stuff, just because it was that enjoyable. The gameplay loops around it and the social experience that it facilitated was just that enjoyable. The most complex that a Smash Bros. N64 environment got, for example, was to have a couple of high vantage points for people to fight over, whereas the Smash Brothers that we have now has stages that are epic levels to navigate in their own right, and there's learning processes involved with that. You can pick up N64 Smash Brothers and play it and enjoy it without having any practice or experience whatsoever, whereas with this Smash Brothers now, unless you are a beginner playing with beginners, if there's one person that's kind of mildly experienced in the thing, then it all starts to become very unbalanced, and it can be frustrating for a newcomer to play. I've seen people who are not very experienced with fighting games or Smash Brothers in particular actually find themselves struggling with this Smash Brothers, which was not the case when introducing a new person to Smash Brothers when it was on the 64 going strong. It was pure local multiplayer gold. That's what the N64 Smash Brothers was about, just the local multiplayer experience. And there was no focus on the complexities. There was just a very simple game to play. Kirby Fighters 2 reminds me very heavily of that N64 Smash Brothers. Each of the various Kirbys that you can collect and use, or their helpers, there's a couple of those as well, you choose one of them and they have a single gimmick that you need to make use of in order to use them in the battlefield. Just one, like the Horn Kirby has his horn, Hammer Kirby has his hammer, and there's only a couple of attacks that they can do with these things. And the levels as well, they're also very simple in design, reminding me more of the N64 Smash Brothers. Usually they're quite small and they will have a single gimmick of their own to contend with. Those gimmicks are fun and do give good variety between the stages, but they are just very simple, easy, and instantly recognizable as gimmicks and as stages. There's a little bit of skill involved in learning each of the Kirby's limited movesets, of course. There's got to be some because it is a fighting game. But for the most part, the game wants you in and playing, rather than spending time practicing and learning its systems. It's not great as a competitive fighting game as a result, and I don't believe anybody would ever think that Kirby Fighters 2 is going to make it big in the competitive fighting scene, but that's not what it's meant to be either, and I don't think we should have that expectation about every fighting game that it needs to be this thing that aims to be a competitive fighter. There's got to be room for games that are just plain fun within the fighting game scene as well. Now, the single player of Kirby Fighters 2 is just a tower of enemies, one battle per floor, and there's an elegance to that I've really enjoyed too. Again, it's reminded me of the extent of the single player on the N64 Smash Brothers. Between levels, you do get the opportunity to choose one of 3 little power-ups that you can apply to your Kirby and his helper, and they do give you special protections, a boost to your fighting strength or health, and it is just enough agency in there between levels to feel like you're making progress. As Kirby, you have some customization and some strategy involved as you battle your way up the tower. But again, it lacks the overwhelming nature of all the stickers and maps and story stuff that you can get involved with Switch Smash Brothers. So the sum of all of this is that Kirby is the better game for casual play as far as I'm concerned. Smash Brothers works if you've got a group of people together who are already familiar enough with Smash Brothers to enjoy it as a mildly or reasonably competitive fighting game. It's very entertaining, it's very well made. Obviously there's such a wealth of characters and stuff now that you can just play that game endlessly if you've got a group together that is of that mindset. And in fairness to the size of the Smash Brothers property, that does describe most of the Nintendo Switch's audience. I do think that Kirby Fighters 2 is filling a gap that is probably a very small gap. I think most people that like their Nintendo games these days is familiar enough with Smash to enjoy Smash Brothers on that kind of reasonably casual level as well. However, there is still probably a gap there, and Kirby Fighters 2 is just so much more of a pick up and play game that there's this delightful nostalgic charm to it. It looks modern, it feels modern to play with, it certainly controls nicely and stuff, but it feels nostalgic as well, like it's a throwback to the N64 fighting game. If I was a betting man, I would actually hazard a guess that Nintendo knows that it's lost something from the Smash Brothers series in turning it into this monstrously potent property that it has become. And I do think that Kirby Fighters is an attempt by the company to recapture some of that easy, plain simplicity that has been lost from Smash Brothers, because Nintendo would have known that there was value in that, and they would have known that they've lost that a little bit in the meantime, in the development, in the growth of Smash Brothers. Nintendo knows that they've lost a little bit there, and I think that Kirby Fighters 2 is a response to that. So I do think that both Kirby Fighters 2 and Smash Brothers have their roles to play. I am absolutely delighted that I've had a chance to play Kirby Fighters 2, and I imagine that it will stay on my Switch for quite some time to come, because whenever I want to play with a mixed group of people, I think that this game will be a more appropriate local multiplayer experience than Smash Brothers probably is. But anyway, that's enough of this video for now. Do check out my review on digitallydownloaded.net for my analysis of Kirby Fighters 2 as opposed to a comparison with Smash Brothers. Do let me know what you think of Kirby Fighters 2 if you've been playing it in the comments. I always like to hear from people. And yeah, please do click that like and subscribe button if you haven't already, because that way you will not miss a single one of my videos. And if you do feel generous and would like to contribute to the ongoing growth of this channel, then please consider throwing $1 a month behind me on Patreon. You can get the link in the description below the video. That $1 a month actually goes a long way to help me to continue to grow this channel and the scope and what I can do with it. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning into this video, and we will see you at the next one.